and then also to get into the grad school process. A couple of you have, when you filled out your getting to know you exercise, some of you mentioned you're contemplating grad school at some point. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I don't know about you, but when I was junior, senior in undergrad school, and someone said, "Oh, you should go to grad school," I'm like, I have no idea what that is. It seems pretty intimidating. And then I realized what I thought it was very different than what it actually was, in a good way. And so hopefully I can dispel some common misconceptions. So thinking about landing a job, first you got to figure out how to look for a job. And so a little bit about that, but of course you got to narrow it down. And some of you were giving some thoughtful feedback in your assignments on, okay, what kinds of jobs, do I think I could do? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And so that is very good to start doing that now, and to recognize your strengths and weaknesses, realizing they can change over time as you get more skills, more training, but really having a kind of a brutally honest, reflection about yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. And sometimes the experiences you get now are going to be helpful, even if you're like, well, I didn't like that. Well, at least you know now, before you get out in the real world, that, yeah, that's not something I really want to do. And so even something that turns out to be maybe not your favorite thing or your favorite subject, at least you have that information now rather than a little too late later. And so your goals can change over time. And one thing that I think isn't really talked about too much, at least I don't really hear it talked about very much, is to try to, certainly you want to pick a career that you feel fulfilled, certainly. However, you want to pay your bills. And so I think one strategy that's often overlooked is getting kind of a reality check on, well, what career paths are, maybe more lucrative, and, what are my projected expenses going to be. And so I found the Bureau of Labor Statistics to be super valuable as I was, especially my junior and senior year in college, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. This was kind of helping me figure out what would be not only interesting, but it would allow me to pay rent and maybe save up some money. And so if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, oh my goodness, they have so much information there. But they luckily have a pretty good search function. This is interesting, just looking at, why you're coming to school and getting a bachelor's degree. You can see here that it is pretty a good idea in terms of, oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's in my other one. So hold that thought. I'm going to show you why it pays off to get a bachelor's degree. It's in my other slide set. But here is I just did a quick search on the top 10, and you can see some of the things listed here. And so we would fit into the life and physical and social sciences, which is about halfway on that diagram. And you can see healthcare is ranking out top. And another thing that I found when I was searching at this website, if any of you have any interest at all in data management, like data science or statistics, oh my gosh, the salary and the demand is tremendous. And so if you have any interest in doing that, I would urge you to explore taking some stats classes, seeing if you really like it, because wow, the projected growth for that, and then salary ranges were impressive. So here I just typed in plant scientist, and I thought this was an interesting result where they're showing the map. The darker colored states are where you see higher employment for plant scientists. And so the Midwest, as well as California. I was kind of surprised Texas was there in there too. Certainly California, when I visited California, I was impressed by all the agriculture going on And then, whoops, you can see states with the highest employment level in plant science. As well as the hourly mean wage. So some of these pretty decent top paying states for this occupation. 101 grand in Maryland. So as you're strategizing, if you are capable of having a lot of mobility on where you want to live next, you might want to strategize a little bit and think about going to states where you can see better job opportunities and better pay scale. So keep that in mind. And then here I typed in mycology, and they were even had a little blurb about that as well. With if you wanted to get into fungi, this is a little old data. I think it's back from 2019, but I thought that was interesting. Employment growth is projected to keep increasing. Agriculture and food scientists. They were looking at some snapshot data, which with what you could do with a bachelor's degree. So again, very interesting webpage, and you can find out information on all kinds of career paths. So tell your friends about it too, because it can be super useful. So Dr. Lafferty talked a little bit about this in her internship. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but I thought I'd keep it in here just to show you that you do have a lot of options after the science degree, and especially with a focus in plant science, you have a lot of options. And the idea is that, again, you know, finding out what you want to do long-term, short-term. Some of you might want to go travel for a while. I had a student, an advisee, who once she graduated with a botany major, she said, the next thing I want to do is travel around the United States. And so she got seasonal jobs that she pieced together one after another. And she kept me up to date on what was going on with her. And I think her first job was down south in Texas. And then she went to California, and then she went to Alaska. And after a full year of doing that, she finally realized what she wanted to do with her life. So she was still a little uncertain, and she decided to go back for her master's into wetland ecology is what she settled on in a grad program at it was Western Michigan University. So there's options like that too to think about. And I'll talk to you more about graduate school in a separate slide set here. Finding options. Dr. Lafferty again talked to you a little bit about that with internships and jobs, that there are a lot of websites and those professional societies that I had you look for also often post openings. Career fairs, which is being held today, of course, that's an option. So, and networking, just getting out there and talking to people, you can actually stumble into some pretty interesting situations just through your networking. So again, of course, you have to be a little discerning when you do find a job ad of, you know, is it right fit for you? And so obviously it's going to take some narrowing down on your part based on your personal goals and interests. But USA Jobs, I've had tons of students tell me that this has been very beneficial over the years. And have most of you looked here? Some. So the federal jobs idea, I had a grad student actually who, Mike, he got his master's degree, and then he ended up working for the USDA at a University of Iowa. And because he had his master's, he was able to go right into a higher GS position. This one, Oh, so they make it a little easier for you.
But then also took a lot of,
And give yourself time.
like they, like, after I did it, it's like, I just got like a lot of those calls.
Oh, okay.
So,
So it was kind of a delayed. Okay. And the last bullet point there allows you to build your resume in it. Is that what you ended up doing?
um,
Or did you upload it? Yeah. So Dr. Lafferty seems to think that doing it into USA Jobs is a good idea, but I guess it depends how much time you have up front to sit and do that. But something to think about. Reaching out. Actually, when you go to grad schools, it's kind of what you're going to do is reach out directly to the person that you want to work with. That's the best strategy, really. And so I'll talk to you more about that. But certainly networking and just asking. I have had a lot of friends when I was a grad student. They weren't in the biology realm, but different disciplines. And back then, the thing to do was job shadow. I don't know how much popular that is these days, but I was amazed. It seemed like anyone who job shadowed, as long as they did a good job, they were getting offers, because they get to know you and it's face to face, you're working with them, you're asking lots of intelligent questions, hopefully, you're figuring out what's going on. And I had a handful of friends, they all got hired. So it's something to think about. Of course, Google, Dr. Lafferty talked about that wonderful tool to use to help you get going on finding jobs. And right now is, whoops, um, you have to really kind of have a master calendar idea of when you should be looking for things. And like right now, we're right in the high peak season of people applying to grad school. And depending on the university, deadlines were back in December. Ours are March 1st. So in that time swath from roughly December to March, you will have different universities giving deadlines for grad school, and then summer positions are also usually popping up. I usually see those January through March roles. So you have to really kind of keep track of that on your overall calendar. And then, I've had students think, well, how many grad schools should I apply for? How many job positions should I apply for? Basically, you don't want to waste the employer's time. Like if you look at a job and it's like, yeah, even if I got offered this, I wouldn't take it. Generally not a good idea to even bother then. We once had an assistant professor position open in the biology department, and um, it's a very expensive process and very time consuming to find assistant professors to hire because it's a lot of upfront work from people in the department. So you're busy narrowing down all the people, you get them narrowed down, you bring them to campus for interviews. And we actually had one, took him out to dinner. And at dinner, he actually said, well, I would take this position anyways. And it's like, do you know how many thousands of dollars we just wasted on you? And, yeah.
Hotel,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Free food,
Yes.
Free hotel, free flights.
And then everybody gets like specific like schedule.
Yep. Yeah, it's a ton of time. It's a ton of commitment. Yeah, and then money too. And I had to laugh. This was many years ago, but Google was certainly a thing by then. And he said, I didn't realize how much snow was up here. And it's like you could easily Google that before you even applied. So I was just stunned. And for him to be so blatantly honest about it, I just anyway, so be a little careful, be thoughtful about which ones you want to apply for. And it's okay to apply for many. That's not a bad idea, but just make sure that they're in the realm of, yeah, I could see myself doing this and taking this job, but don't do one that you're not going to do. Okay, so I think this is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to need to get all of your ducks in a row with the resume. That's one big goal of this class, is to help you with your resume, cover letter, as well as, you know, finding out how to job hunt and what grad school is all about. And so cover letters, having a template is actually a really good idea. And then you just tweak it over time, depending on the position you're applying for. A lot of the time, your cover letter is going to be an email that you reach out to somebody, especially for grad school. It's actually very common that you do an email interaction. And so your introductory hello email is the cover letter. So this idea of matching what they want from you and making sure that you do it is very important. This is kind of the very first test, really, of do you have what it takes. So if they post a job and they say, we need A, B, C, D, E, F from you, and you leave off A and F, what does that say about you? And so you have to be very methodical. It's very similar to when we write grants and ask for money. Every granting agency has a ton of criteria that we have to follow to the letter. If we don't, they throw your grant away, literally. They'll just like, if you can't follow directions, we're not even going to look at your application, your grant proposal. So it's really important that you are doing everything that they call for and making sure you can always reach out to them if you're unsure about something and ask for clarification. But handing in something incomplete, you know, we're interviewing for 2 positions right now in our department, and you know, if they don't hand in a complete application, we don't consider them. So very, very important. And of course, it takes time because different jobs have different criteria, different things that they might ask you to do. So, you know, when Dr. Lafferty mentioned maybe creating an Excel spreadsheet where you can keep track of everything, that's, I think, a really good idea, that you don't miss or drop the ball on something. Wait and see, which is hard. And then, you know, the temptation is to reach back out to them, but don't do it too early. You have to realize that sometimes, like with the government jobs, it could take quite a while for them to get back to you. University too, like if you're looking for a grad position, it could take a while for professors to get back to you. So be aware of that and don't get too discouraged. Glacially slow is a good way to phrase it. And again, don't get discouraged. And so they should respond either way. Either yes, we want to interview you for, you know, to narrow down the list, or, you know, no, sorry. But they should give you feedback at some point. It's just you might have to wait. And then, you know, I've worked with many students who have really strong resumes, really good experience. They apply for different jobs and they don't get it, and they get, you know, it's discouraging. It can get hard to take, and I just tell them, hey, you know, it's you're it's not a reflection on you directly. It's often the pool, and often other things are going on that you don't know about, like maybe they already had someone in mind, which happens. And so they'll, you know, by law they have to put out those advertisements, but they might already have someone that's like perfect, and they know and they're going to bring in. So, and then with grad school, I've had several students get really discouraged because they didn't get into the top position they wanted. And again, a large part of that, when you apply to grad school, and if they tell you no, it's not that they didn't like your qualifications or your application. It might be as simple as, I don't have funding to support you right now, and the college is, you know, we're out of position offering, we're full up, we don't have anything available for you. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. So try not to get too discouraged. If you do make it to the interview stage, that's another ball game that you have to think about. And I really, really encourage you to think carefully about this when you know you have an interview. I've had students that are going off to interview for grad positions, and they'll come in and chat with me first and kind of go through their list of questions, and I can give them an idea of what the professors might ask them. And so it's kind of like a dry run practice. We'll do that in this class too. We'll do some interview practice as well, and talk about this in more detail, but certainly giving it some good thought beforehand and just being really well prepared for each position. Really thought about what they might ask you, what you want to ask them, and make sure you ask questions. If you just sit there and don't ask things, that might come off that you just aren't that interested. So be prepared to ask intelligent questions of them as well. And of course, being well rested. Another thing too, they're getting more, it seems, into phone or Zoom interviews first. And I think that's a great idea, so they don't have to pay your way to travel to the actual location. So it's a real cost and time savings. I get it. Have you heard that trick that when I was on a phone interview for this job, one of the tricks I learned is to stand up when you're on. Maybe in Zoom it might be harder if they don't want you to be standing or you feel awkward standing, but for phone interview, standing up, actually, they say it creates a good physiology in you for being sharp and ready to go, and you just seem to be a little bit more awake and responsive. And so I encourage you to look a little and think a little bit about your body and little tricks like that you can do to just give yourself an edge. I mean, I think you've noticed sitting around, right? You get kind of lethargic. You might slow your pace down in terms of your speech, or you might get a little foggy headed. They also, say certain things you should eat before an interview to rev up your energy without being, spastic, but being, awake and energetic and ready to go. So even stuff like that is, I think, really worth investigating a little bit. And then, of course, whenever you're in an interview, it's a conversation. They're not just going to keep drilling you questions that you have to give a one word or one sentence answer to. It's a give and take, which means you have to listen. You can't just be thinking about what you're going to say next. You have to carefully listen to what they're saying so you can converse with them rather than just kind of robotically answer their questions. So, it's when you're nervous, sometimes you can get kind of flustered and kind of forget to listen. So enthusiasm is always good. It's hard to read people if they're very, very kind of stoic, I guess. You need a little bit of that give and take. So be a little careful about that. And certainly being professional is a good idea. Watch the language. Some of the things that you say and phrase, you have to be careful. So we'll get into this in more detail as the semester rolls by here. So we'll come back to some of these ideas. And then hopefully you're going to get an offer. And then that can be a struggle. Do you really want this or not? Is it going to fit you? And so there's a lot of things you have to think about. Hopefully that's why if you think about this stuff ahead of time, when you do get the offer, you'll be able to respond pretty quickly. If you agonize over it, they might turn around and offer it to somebody else. And so you can't be too long and drag your feet. But certainly, on the other hand, don't take a job and then at the last minute go, oh, kidding, I'm not gonna take this job. So just be careful about that. And then don't feel bad if you didn't get any offers in your round of applications. That, like I said, is not necessarily a reflection on you. It's just a lot of things are happening behind the scenes you may not be aware of. And there are, you're in a pool, you're competing. And so there's going to be competition that might have had the edge on that round of applications. So keep going and it will eventually work out. That volunteering or job shadowing, I think also, if you get denied jobs where they say thanks, no thanks. Excuse me. One of the other thing I don't think I explicitly put on here is if you feel comfortable with interacting with that person who tells you thanks but no thanks, you could ask for feedback and say, could you give me some feedback on what, why I didn't get the position, anything I could do to improve my interview process or something like that. And I have done that even on grant applications when I've submitted grants and I didn't get the grant. I'll ask for feedback, like, okay, what went right and what went wrong, what's going on here, and they are usually pretty good at least giving you some feedback. So that's something you might consider, just to try to improve your chances for next time. But keep going forward, even if you don't have a paid job in the career path that you want. You could still volunteer in there. You could job shadow, networking. And so there's ways to keep moving forward, even if you didn't get the job that you wanted at that time. So, okay, that is one of the slide sets I wanted to work through. I think some of it Dr. Lafferty covered quite nicely. But there's a couple of extra ideas in here that I wanted you to consider. Any questions on any of the job searching process from this perspective anyways? Yes.
Not a question, but when you're doing like phone reviews, keep track of like anything that was said about it. If you have housing, like stuff like that, like daily tasks, because it's really hard when you do a lot of interviews to actually remember, like,
Yeah. Taking notes as you go.
yeah, and yeah, that really helped. Yeah, I did. So I did apply to the government jobs, and they didn't get to me until after I was offered a position as a worker.
Yeah.
So then I had to turn down trail work because I said, well,
Okay. Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess.
Well, and taking notes like that too, also, you can easily make comparisons then. If you get, more than one offer, you're like, okay,
That's the same question. Because my thing was like housing, wanted housing.
Right.
And I ended up paying like $9.60 a day for housing. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Could have been worse.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Yes. And so, so I'm going to get into that slide set next. I'll talk a lot more about grad school processes. That's my next slide set. Okay, let me stop share here. All right, so like I said, when I was an undergrad and someone said, hey, you should go to grad school, I was like, no way. I just immediately thought that's just unattainable, too hard, too complicated. There's no way I could do it. And so luckily that person sat me down. It was a professor, one of my professors that in a class I was taking, and he explained the details of what it's all about. And then I realized, oh, it's not this huge thing that I had built up in my head. And so this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well, showing the degree, levels of degree or training that you get, and looking at your unemployment and earnings for each. And so you can see the bachelor's degree is right about in the middle there. And that as you go up, you can see your unemployment rate is, it keeps dropping and dropping. And so you're doing a good thing. being here and getting your bachelor's. So it's a good decision. And so now you might be thinking, should I go and keep going? You know, should I get a master's or a PhD? And professional degree is referring to like a MD degree or a veterinary degree. And so there's lots of options. And so certainly going the job route is, and in the realm of botany and plant science, getting jobs with a bachelor's is definitely doable. There are a lot of positions out there. So it's not like you have to go on to grad school, but you may be considering some positions where you've already been looking and they're like, yeah, having a master's, PhD would be a good idea. And so most of this is going to focus in on what is grad school. And so it is, um, you can see here with the grad school idea that you have options of, whoops, laser pointer. You have the thesis option, which is what we typically do here in our department, but you can also see there's a non-thesis option. And many schools, more and more schools now are offering this, a non-thesis, which means you don't have to do original research and write a thesis. And so it's more classwork and maybe a capstone project instead. There's our teaching degrees out there too, if you want to teach in the realm of plant science or science in general. And so we'll work through some of this idea. In our department, we have a biology master's, and then the IB stands for Integrated Biosciences. That's another master's degree that we offer, and I'll explain those as well. And so certainly, you know, going the job route as soon as you graduate, certainly. But you can also do the graduate degree path as well. So the jobs versus internship, I think Dr. Lafferty already kind of did a good job with explaining this. Internships, by the way, you tend to not be able to do those when you graduate. You know, they're not going to take you on as an intern. Very rarely. I've seen maybe 2 instances where they said, we'll take you, if you've just graduated, we'll take you for that summer. But it's very, very rare. And so internships are usually something you do in the summers in between your freshman, sophomore, junior years. But once you graduate, it's hard. Dr. Lafferty already talked to you about internships, but I just wanted to put it in here to remind you that there is a process if you're going to do that, and whether it's paid or unpaid. But if you want to do it for credit, have it show up on your transcripts, then there's paperwork for sure that needs to be filled out. And I'm not going to go through this. It's just a list of what Dr. Lafferty was talking about. And just be aware that you need your immediate boss to sign off on stuff. And at the very end of the internship, so that last bullet point there, they need to give feedback to, in this case, it'd be, I think, Dr. Lafferty, who would need that feedback on the evaluation of your performance. Okay, and so the website for doing internships, she already gave you that. I just put it in here to remind you that we have a website that has all of the paperwork. So jobs, you can certainly immediately start looking for permanent jobs, or like I said, you might want to do a temporary job. And if your goal is to travel, you know, get temporary jobs and piece it together is an option. If you don't have any other obligations where you're free to travel and it's pretty easy for you and you want to do that, sure. And so certainly permanent versus temporary. And then finding jobs, there's a lot of different options. And so again, you've probably seen this on several of our PowerPoints already, but just trying to put things into easy for you to find and start looking through this stuff. So thesis programs, non-thesis programs are most of what I'm going to talk about. So graduate school is, oh, and before I get into it, just remember too, K through 12 education, a lot of people don't really even think about this, but getting a bachelor's degree, you can pretty easily start teaching at the K through 12. Depending on what state you're in, you might not even need a teaching certificate from a bachelor's level program. So I've had students that have graduated and gone out east, and they do a little bit of training and pass a test, and they're good to go. And so they don't have to like go back to school to become a teacher. They don't have to do that. And so it depends on the state you live in, how they regulate that. And so just be aware that you don't have to have a bachelor's teaching degree to teach. Michigan, I'm guessing no, but they may have changed the rules. This was years ago. And years ago, when she was asking me about this, Michigan would not allow that. But she found, and she wanted to go out east anyways. That was her top choice. She ended up in, I think it was Massachusetts, and she was able to do that. And so she had a bachelor's degree, and then she just, I think she did a little bit of training and took a test that she had to pass. And that certified. It basically was like a certification. Yeah. So I can look into it and see what Michigan's rules are these days, because they periodically reassess all of that. But the Michigan Education Association, MEA, that is the kind of the governing body, Michigan Education Association, MEA. And they would be the ones that would post what it takes. Okay. Ah, okay. Yeah, that was doing that too. So were they going back to school for a teaching degree? Okay. So they might have figured out a system for people like this that already have a bachelor's, because we're hurting for good K through 12 instructors. And so they might have realized we need to kind of relax our rules. Like the MEA had super strict rules when I was an undergrad. It was like incredibly, you had to get a bachelor's level teaching degree, or that was it, you know. But now we're hurting for good teachers. So hopefully they've relaxed that. So don't forget about that. Teaching can be extremely rewarding. So depending on what university you're looking at, for grad schools, they may do a rotation style, where I did that when I initially went to Michigan State University. We were on trimesters there, so every semester you would spend time in under a different mentorship and do different types of research. And then after your first year, you'd figure out like who you wanted to do your mentorship or your degree with. Others are different, where right away you match up with somebody and that's who you work with right from the get-go. That's how we do it here. And so you have to find somebody that you want to work with before you even apply here at Northern. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And so non-thesis grad programs. So we actually have over in the education department, they have a non-thesis grad degree that I just found out about it because one of my former advisees is applying for it. And it is I have it in here, Masters of Arts in Education. And so he's going to take a few education classes, and then he has to take 16 credits of biology content classes because he wants to go teach in biology at the college level. And so there's that type of idea where if you get further advanced training in biology and then some education courses, that all combined would get you a master's degree. And so our education department just created that one. And so non-thesis, you can also do applied we've been talking about the idea of a non-thesis program here at Northern in our department, where it would be like heavy biotechnology, where you basically would get a lot of training in biotechnology skills, but it wouldn't be a thesis research program. So there's many universities that offer that kind of thing too. So then I've often had students say, I'm so burned out. I want to go to grad school, but I can't imagine doing it right away. And that's totally normal to feel that way. And so you have to give some thought. And my advice is always, if you're feeling burned out, wait, because if you enter into a grad program feeling burned out, it's really tough. Grad school is demanding. And if you go in worn out, it's going to be easy to quit. And you don't really want to do that. So can you wait a year? Sure. The longer you wait, a little harder it gets to come back though. So consider that. I've had students go off for a year. I had a student who applied to do graduate work with me, and she spent a year over in China doing English as a second language. And when we were chatting initially, she actually said, oh, I wasn't sure you would even consider my application because I took a year off. And I said, no, if anything, it shows your maturity that you recognize I need a break. You're 1 year older now, so you're more mature. And you went and taught in a foreign, China of all places. You went way out of your comfort zone. And to me, that's a sign that you're willing to, go for it. You're not afraid of some challenges. So taking a year off is totally okay. Just don't be like a couch potato the whole year. If you can demonstrate that you did something during that year, that's a good thing. So lots of different options for finding grad programs. And the Chronicle of Higher Education, most students are totally unaware of that. It's like a newspaper publication, but they have tons of advertisements for graduate, master's level. We need a master's student. We need a PhD student. We need a postdoctoral student. We need assistant professors. It's all in there. I think our library's closed up, but our library does have the Chronicle of Higher Education that you can access. And the way I found my grad mentor was through Google Scholar. Well, technically, basically what I did was I searched for published studies in scientific journals that I found very interesting. And if I read a paper of somebody's work and wow, that is super cool, I'd love to do that. The trick is typically what you do is you look for the last author on that publication, not the first author. Usually it's the last author on the author list. The last author is the one who is mentoring all those people, or at least some of them. The first author is the person who did all the work, so they're usually a grad student or a postdoc. Okay, so that's usually the trick to do. And so you read a paper you like, find the last author, get to their website and see if who they are, where they're located, if they're looking for any grad students. And I found that amazingly productive when I did that. So think about that too. And Google Scholar can be super, super helpful, and it's really easy to use. Well, how do you pay for this? I put an X over the pay for it. I really, really discourage you paying for your own grad school. And that is a huge misconception. Everyone thinks, I can't afford to go to grad school. That's another, tens of thousands of dollars. No, in the sciences, we pay you. Isn't that awesome? We pay you. We have to do something for it. Usually you teach a lab. I'm sure you have grad students in your lab section that have been teaching you. Okay, that's how they get paid. And so if you have friends that are in the business world, or like, I want to get an MBA, they have to pay for it. My brother got an MBA. He had to pay for it. Not every field. Many other fields don't. Yes, you got but again, if you get hired in to teach classes, like there's a class in the English department, that's what it is. Right. And so, right. And so it really, you have to do a little digging to find out what kind of options you have available. I tend to tell students though, at least in sciences, nationwide, still the accepted path that we pay to go to grad school. You don't have to. And so the only time I've had a student say, well, I'm going to pay for it is because their significant other got a job somewhere and she couldn't pass it up. And she's like, well, I guess I'm going to this city. And well, I should probably go to grad school. And they didn't have any positions, so she paid for it. So, but again, if you can manage it to, the TA idea is you teach a lab. The RA idea, research associate, I did both of these. I taught when I was a grad student and got paid for it. And then I was also an RA, which my mentor got a grant funded. And then I worked off of that grant. It wasn't part of my research though, but I was paid to do the research for that. And that was awesome because I did something totally different from my research. I learned a lot. Writing grants, our grad students write grants. I did that as well. So try not to pay for it. Can all that help it. So many people think you have to pay for it. You have to ask that during the interview, but there are businesses that will do that. And so, for example, when I was at the University of Minnesota as a postdoc, I was allowed to take classes free working there, and so you you could only take one per semester. They wouldn't let you take more, but you could see how you could cobble that together, into a master's program in short order. So it's not that bad. The technician who was hired to work in our lab, she had a bachelor's. That's what she was doing, just one class a semester, and she got her master's doing that. So if you work, by the way, if you work for a university, go to the university websites. If you're looking for jobs and you like the university atmosphere, go to their human resources page because they hire. When I was at the University of Minnesota, lab technicians were everywhere. People, it's so nice to work in a lab where there was a lab technician who kind of managed the whole lab and took care of everything. So go to especially the bigger universities, they hire bachelor's level students. Well, I mean, so it depends on I guess the employer, how they handle it, but um, there are like professional companies out there in the business world that if they hire you, they'll say, we'll send you to the university. You can take a class a semester and we'll pay for it, but you still have to work for us full time, that type of thing. So you know, mhm. Yes, yes. So then could you take, yes, so she could take classes too for free. Like I can take classes and it's free. Yeah. But it depends on the university. Not all of them do that. So you have to check into that and see. Um, so I see we're running out of time. So let me see where we are in the. Okay, I just have a few. So the next time we meet, I would like to say a little bit more about grad education, okay, and how to do grad school. Um, because I really want to dispel some common misconceptions, okay, and get you thinking about this. Because I know some of you may be like, no, there's no way I'm going to do it. I got to pay for it, and I got to come up with this amazing project. And I'm here to tell you, no, you don't have to pay for it, and you don't have to be Albert Einstein to go into grad school. Okay, so let's stop there though, because we're out of time, and I'll wrap this up next week. So, by the way, hopefully you've submitted your resume, your draft. So what I'm going to do is take your names off of it and shuffle it so that each of you will like read maybe 2 or 3 of them and give some constructive criticism and comments. And then they'll get reshuffled and back to you. This is an exercise to have you all get some exposure to looking at other people's resumes to get ideas and also get that constructive comments so you can improve. Okay, so this is supposed to be a very supportive, beneficial process to help you improve your CV and your resume. Okay, so I will be announcing that as soon as I get all my part of it done and posted, then I'll let you know what the deal is and where to access everything. Okay.